Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. Redditors that host their home on Airbnb. What has been your worst experience with a guest? I used to travel a lot for work and I would put my apartment up on Airbnb while I was away. My apartment has a bunch of closets and drawers which I used to leave empty and at my guest's disposal. However, there is one closet in the bedroom which I kept locked cause it is where I keep my personal belongings. One time a guest left a bad review saying that the place had no storage space, which I was very confused about until I got home and saw my closet. Dude had tried to open it using brute force. The door was almost pulled off its hinges and the wood was chipped in some places. The door in question had 2 padlocks, and a perfectly usable closet on the opposite wall was untouched. He was looking for the loot. How dare you deny him? This is why we need mimics. Not gonna work. I always carry a few undead hunter charms on me. We are live-in hosts, so we are present while guests stay in our spare room. A guest arrived and immediately announced that they had shit himself during their journey. They then marked us down for cleanliness. Mate, you shit yourself. Also a guest who found a pair of my flip-flops in a wardrobe that they should not have opened, then shit over the bathroom floor, ruining my favorite flip-flops in the process. Also, a guest who went out drinking for 10 hours before checking in, meaning I had to collect them from the taxi, put them in bed in the recovery position, check on them when I woke up for work, then call the taxi company on their behalf when it turned out they'd lost their phone. I really needed that laugh you just gave me. Thanks. Laughs are hard to come by these days. When you're down, just remember shit-stained pants and an Airbnb. This thread is making me feel a lot better about the time my period started unexpectedly while sleeping on my host's white bedsheets. I at least had the decency to strip the bed and wash out what I could in the sink. Thankfully the hosts were out of town, and judging from their photos, a lovely lesbian couple, I figured out of anybody they would be the most sympathetic to my plight. Rented out to a group of 4 girls. Turns out they were going partying every day during their stay. I get called one day at 5 AM. It's the guard from my building telling me there's a passed out girl in the lobby's couch, puking and pissing herself. None of her friends had gone back to help her. Ruined the couch obviously. The next day they sent me a message again. Another one of the girls had sprinted to the building stairs and also pissed herself. I was messy drunk for 4 years at college and never pissed myself. None of my friends did either. WTF were they doing that meant they were pissing themselves so much? Do some freaking Kegels, ladies. I worked as a bartender in a beer-only bar for a few weeks. Lousy pay for 60 hours a week. A woman was on a first day and she was drinking porters and stouts with a high alcohol content all night. She had at least 6-8 beers. The girl was making out with the date and suddenly she passes out and pisses herself. We had to clean that up and give her alcohol to smell to wake her up. It was a mess. And she was like 35. I worked at a bar and there was a couple in their 30s that had been dating for a while who were regulars. They would come in and hang out, but inevitably after several drinks they would start making out at the bar almost non-stop. It was really weird, but they were both nice and tipped well, so it just went on like that for a year or 2. It was a small place with a lot of regulars and most people just got used to it. A friend of mine rented to a girl who was convinced that there were cameras hidden all around the unit. She dismantled the lighting fixtures, picture frames, medicine cabinets, remote controls, etc. On a side note, my sister and her fiance stayed in an Airbnb that really was full of cameras. They found out because owner texted them almost immediately after they exited the seemingly private indoor hot tub and not yet returned the lid, before they even changed out of swimwear, which they luckily chose to wear. She was obviously immediately horrified because they were clearly watching them. Airbnb apologized profusely and gave their money back, along with providing a free hotel their last couple days of the trip. But still, edit. They found a lot of cameras throughout the house, including bathrooms and bedrooms. They never thought to even look. It was the first time they'd ever vacationed without real adults. I have a story along these lines, though not Airbnb. This happened about 35 years ago. I had a friend who was a member of a church. He and his GF got a place to live, a converted shed, that was offered to them by one of the ladies that went to their church. Also a devout Christian. The shed adjoined her home but had been fitted out with a bedroom, toilet, kitchen, etc. Well, they were there for a couple of months. They had decided to wait until they were married, but in the end could not help themselves and one night had sex for the first time. The next day the lady owner told them they had to leave because they'd had sex before marriage and that was a sin. They said okay, but then the guy got curious. They'd only done it for the first time last night. How did she know? After examining everything they discovered she'd placed her microphone under the bed. I told him to call the police but he didn't want to cause trouble, so they left. And they did get married a few months later and as far as I know are still married today. I found it hilarious that she considered premarital sex a sin but listening to someone in their bedroom was fine. The movie License to Wed has a plotline identical to this. I thought it was contrived but I guess this actually happens. Dude stole my $120 sneakers and broke my TV. You're lucky, at least the guy didn't shit his pants. Yes, I did. How do you PM human souls? I worked in a call center that handled some of Airbnb's customer service. So, one guest murdered 2 people in the host's home and got arrested there. Another guest was from a culture that eats iguanas and barbecued up a 7-year-old girl's pet iguana to serve to the family as thanks for hosting him. Another guest filled a mug with human shit and left it in the host's microwave. You really lose all faith in humanity working in customer service call centers. Editing to add. Airbnb requires photo evidence for all host complaints. And guess who is the first to see them? The initial customer service agent, who may only be on their first or second day taking calls. And the iguana man was forced to pay for both a new barbecue for the family and a replacement iguana. Is it weird that the iguana one is the most shocking to me? Like, how would you not recognize that it's a pet? The hindering it's indoors and in a typical home tank. If you have the money to travel, I'm sure you've seen pet lizards before. And even if they hadn't seen a pet lizard before, it seems like it would be rude in any culture to slaughter your host's livestock without asking. A guy I work with told this story how he hired a maid through a referral from his friend. She was great apparently and asked to stay there a couple times when he was gone. After he agreed to let her stay a few weeks when it wasn't being rented, however, she ghosted him. He ended up calling the cops and they checked up on her. She was there and although nervous, everything seemed normal. She later got a hold of him and asked to stay longer. He said no, clean it and get out. He comes back randomly to his house at 5 AM a few days later to someone sleeping in his downstairs room with dirty dishes and cigarette butts everywhere. Ends up it's this maid's heroin addicted husband. He had been using it as a flop house and drug den. This guy escorted the husband out by gunpoint pantsless. The place was trashed downstairs, but apparently perfectly clean still upstairs. His TV was stolen but the husband brought it back and left it in the driveway so he didn't get charged with theft. Apparently there was little he could do about the free stay the husband took advantage of. Reminds me of the plot of the movie Parasite, minus the heroin and stolen TV. That movie was fantastic. If you liked that, watch Forgotten, 26 Years, and Mom, all Korean movies. My friend's Airbnb guest taught their kitten to meow once, and then the quietest sweet needy cat turned loud and needy. 'Twas a curse that kept on giving long after he left. Too bad he didn't teach the cat to speak English. Missed opportunity. Cats meowing is them trying to speak English, or at least human. Cats raised away from humans don't even meow apparently. Cats rarely use meows to communicate with each other. Purrs, trills, hisses, and yowls yes, along with body language like ears and tail positioning. Not my story but a friend of mine's. He has an apartment in London, an urban area with dense houses and population. The apartment he hosted has this window facing Main Street which people tend to bet and it's non-see-through but it's not. So the guy who stayed in it decided to sit in front of that naked and had a few beers, overlooking the great view. He must have fallen asleep or something and everyone passing by the road just had to see this poor creature. It was all on Snapchat at the time I recall. LMAO. Edit. This has really blown up so let me clarify a few things. The area I refer to is in the context of where the apartment is and not the whole of London in general. In that sense, the population per square km here would be extremely high. He sat on a couch, right in front of the see-through window to have his beers, just like anyone would do. The window used to be non-see-through until it had sustained some damage from a nearby construction site, forcing them to repair immediately without thorough checking. This is where the whole new feature of see-through was born. Thanks. I kinda like that guy's style though. Plot twist. He knew exactly what he was doing, and it was just some weird sex thing. Yay. No way he wouldn't instantly notice his mistake upon the first bypasser staring back at him. So your dog was talking junk about that guy's girlfriend and then asking you for weed? One hell of a dog you got. That was before the dog shit itself, too. And then marked its owners down for cleanliness. Join our community Discord, link in description. My mum did this. She had some people from out of country come stay. They moved the furniture around, swapped and most mattresses, left a massive pile of dishes in the kitchen. The bathroom was all buggered, and they must have been cooking and smashing clams or oysters shell in and around the BBQ outside. I went over to help my mum out a little after work for a bit, but it was a 2-day minimum cleanup job she had to do. Mum even had to bring in a cleaner lady to help as well. Needless to say, the people who stayed didn't get their deposit back and got a file reported on them. Belp should be a word. I don't know for what, but it should be. It's the name of a town village in my country. It's not much, but already something. Buggered. Love that word. Creepy guy ordering young prostitutes. One came by, knocked on the front door at like 11 at night. Not the correct entrance. After I sent her the correct way, they began to argue loud enough for me to hear upstairs about their sugar daddy arrangement and how he couldn't trust her for whatever reason and asked her to leave, I guess. 30 minutes later, another ucking prostitute knocks on my front door. 1 stars all around. Gross. Agreed. Gross. I'm embarrassed to say that I was not the host in this story. Me and my mate went out on a pub crawl in Prague during our gap year. I don't enjoy clubbing and the last venue on the crawl was a club, so I cut slightly earlier than my mate. Around 1 AM I got back into our apartment and went to bed. I was woken up by my friend at 4 AM and the entire kitchen was flooded. Not even exaggerating, there was like a fucking inch of water lining the floor, spewing rapidly out of a broken overhead pipe. I asked him WTF happened and he claimed he had woken up standing in it. Being unfamiliar with the house, I didn't know where the choke point in the pipe was to cut it off. We called the guy who owned the place, which was painstakingly slow given the time. We managed to get through to a family member who then contacted him. He arrived about 15 minutes later, in which time the water issue has become even worse. We had sealed off the room using a heap of towels to minimize the water leaving the kitchen, as it had tile floors while the rest of the house was hardwood. But this made it accumulate to about ankle height. The kitchen also had a sunken floor. Up until about 6 or 7 we were using pots to clear the indoor swimming pool from what used to be the kitchen. I didn't look like it had done a horrendous amount of damage once we were finished, but I imagine the water seeped through the floor and into the walls, causing all sorts of damage. What makes it worse is that it was a 3rd floor apartment. What a nightmare. How did the host respond to that? Hopefully he had insurance for such a serious issue. Did anybody else gasp audibly at the phrase "tried to do a pull-up"? A bit late to the party, but I have to. One dude stole my trimmer. This other guy took the cake though. When I took him the second key to the apartment that his mother needed, he opened the door slightly ajar and only extended his hand, palm facing up, to receive the key. Didn't want to shake my hand. Sent me messages complaining to me that drawers in the bathroom were full of personal stuff. One was full of items that we purposefully leave for guests to use, including new pads, soaps, toothbrushes. He was annoyed by this and said, "I'll just move this to one of the bedside tables in the master bedroom, shall I?" Which is also full anyway. There. We leave blocks and pens for guests to use, as well as reading material like The Economist or Guides to the City. This also annoyed him. He also complained about food that we leave for guests to partake of and be welcomed by. Upon leaving, guy leaves a massive, scathing review including hot takes like the linens and pots being worn out and needing replacement. They're not and they don't. They are also top of the line. Says the apartment was dirty upon entering. It wasn't. It was thoroughly cleaned before his arrival, as it is before every guest's arrival. He concludes by complaining the taxi ripped him off. I'm guessing the insinuation is that I was in cahoots with the taxi company? I don't know. His mother was nice though. I often wonder how parents who give birth to fucking idiots feel about said ducking idiots. I totally don't get this. Do they get a discount for complaining to Airbnb or something? Even Karens usually have a motive. Yes, they do. Airbnb likely gave them some sort of % off discount for their next stay somewhere. Soap and toothpaste provided, free snacks. Your place sounds great. My partner looks after an Airbnb for his friend, self-catering only. The house is an 1800s big country house. It is used primarily for large get-togethers and parties. Most guests are great and clean up well to get their deposit back. A group stayed and left the place pretty messy, but we couldn't figure out what the smell was. Turns out they left a full pig in a rubbish bag under the kitchen table. They tried to cook a pig on a spit and basically left its mainly raw corpse under the table. Every toilet was destroyed too. Must have eaten the semi-charred meat on the outside of the pig when drinking without realizing that it was or sorry Gordon Ramsay. Always find it amusing when people figure out that pigs on a spit aren't exactly really easy to do. They take a very long time to cook through and constantly tending to the fire or gas for like most of a day. I've seen a couple birthdays with a whole pig that didn't turn out properly at all. You can't just throw it under a roaring fire for 2 hours and think it's gonna work while you get drunk as 10 men. Not a host, but I stayed at an Airbnb that rented 2 rooms. I was in bed and hear the other guest, a man and women, return. They're loud and drunk, but nothing crazy. About 10 minutes later I hear what I thought was them having sex, but then quickly realize it's someone getting hit. The host and I both hear this. The host starts knocking on the door, asking what's going on and to open the door. The woman opens the door and her lip is split wide open. She's bleeding all down her shirt. The guy is in the room, but runs out with a backpack and leaves. He's taken both of their cell phones and wallets. The police show up and everyone gives statements. They found him walking down the road and he found different accommodations at the police station. I slept fine. The room was Harry Potter themed, so I still left 5 stars. May I ask, where is this Harry Potter themed Airbnb? The bedroom under the stairs. Not a host, was a guest. We stayed in a carriage house that was split into 2 apartments in Savannah. The host was the most wonderful southern personality I've ever encountered. Around 3 AM I woke up to a loud banging noise, like someone trying to break down a door. It got loud and louder, and eventually sounded violent. This went on for 20 minutes before my GF got out of bed and politely asked the neighboring guests to be quiet. They remained quiet for another 20 minutes and then they were at it again. This time much louder. Drunkenly they locked themselves out and decided that breaking the door down was their only option. The next morning when we left, the deadbolt was knocked out. The entire door frame was stripped off and the door was smashed to bits. We felt so bad for the host. It was going into a holiday and she had to cancel the next guest stay because of the damage. Stupid drunk college kids. OMG, this reminded me of my landlord in Savannah. I rented the top part of a carriage house, and the property was sold 6 months into my year lease. My new landlord was a perv. He would go into the bottom part of the carriage house, which was more like a garage type area, and look up through the floorboards to see what I was doing. He also regularly went into my apartment while was gone and stole my underwear. I know it was him because I found his hiding place below in the garage area. Fucking perv. I'd have spilt some boiling water onto the floor. Before reading this comment, I'd like to explain that it's probably NSFW or appropriate to read if you are sensitive. This is just an honest response to the question posted. I used to own several hostels in Mexico. During the low season we would create pages for our private rooms. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.